Hello, I'm Alma Angeles, and you're watching Eagle News International.
And I'm CJ Hero. Welcome to the program. Now on tonight's headlines.
The Philippines is temporarily banning flights from the United Kingdom from December 24th through the 31st due to concerns over the spread of a new variant of SARS-CoV-2.
France and Britain reopened cross-border travel after a two-day standoff that threatened supply chains, but the UK warns it could take days for thousands of stranded hauliers to get on the move again.
President Donald Trump rejects a massive COVID economic relief package passed by Congress, branding it as a disgrace.
And virtual idols are taking the real-life stage in China.
The Philippines is temporarily banning flights from the United Kingdom from December 24th to the 31st due to concerns over the spread of a new variant of SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes COVID-19, emerging in the UK. Passengers already in transit from the UK and all those who have been to the UK within 14 days immediately preceding arrival in the Philippines who arrived before 12:01 a.m. of December 24th will not be subject to entry restriction, but they will be required to undergo stricter quarantine and testing protocols. Such protocols include the observation of an absolute 14-day quarantine period at the Athletes Village in the New Clark City, notwithstanding a negative reverse transcription polymerase chain reaction test result. CAP spokesman Eric Apolonio said the Athletes Village has complete and bigger facilities, which is located at the former Clark City Stadium. Outbound travel to the UK will likewise be subject to the exit protocols of the Philippines and the United Kingdom.
The Japanese government says it will tighten entry restrictions on travelers from the United Kingdom after a new fast-spreading strain of coronavirus appeared in Britain. Chief Cabinet Secretary Kato Katsunobu told reporters Japan will refuse new entries from the UK for the time being. He said Japanese and non-Japanese residents who take short business trips of up to 7 days to the UK will be asked once again to self-quarantine for 14 days when they return home or enter Japan. NHK said Japanese nationals returning from the UK will now be asked from December 27 to provide proof that they have been tested within 72 hours of leaving the country.
France and Britain will reopen cross-border travel Wednesday after a snap 48-hour ban to curb the spread of a new coronavirus variant threatened UK supply chains. Now, much of Europe swiftly banned British travelers and UK freight entering their nations after the discovery of a more transmissible variant of COVID-19 in Britain. On Tuesday, dramatic images showed hundreds of lorries backed up in Dover, with British Prime Minister Boris Johnson facing growing pressure to resolve the deadlock even as the post-Brexit trade deal deadline loomed. The measures imposed on hauliers have caused concern over shortages of some fresh food products over the holiday period, already marred by strict coronavirus restrictions. More than 2,800 lorries remain stranded in the southern English county of Kent, unable to make the crossing to France, with drivers having spent a second night sleeping in their cabs. The British Transport Ministry said all lorry drivers, irrespective of nationality, will now require a lateral flow test. In a statement, they added the test could detect the new COVID-19 variant in around 30 minutes rather than the 24 hours required after a PCR test. France, meanwhile, has reopened cross-border travel with Britain on Wednesday, but a negative COVID-19 test will also be required.
Meanwhile, truck drivers protest at the Manston airfield lorry holding area as they are asked for a certified negative COVID test to get to France. There were also reports of lorry drivers clashing with police. They have blockaded the port of Dover as tensions over testing soar. Many have been stranded at the port town since Sunday when the border was closed due to fears over the out-of-control new coronavirus strain. The ban was lifted last night, but drivers must test negative at a huge pop-up testing site at Manston Airport before they make the trip. There are no facilities at Dover, which is now completely gridlocked to conduct tests. And with at least 2,800 drivers in Kent, those sat yards from the port are being told they must go to Manston. This is causing frustration, and drivers have blockaded the port's exit with their vehicles and a human chain, meaning UK-bound freight will soon be stuck.
All right, let's get the latest coronavirus situation in the United Kingdom. Joining us live is Aribel Celestino. Hello, Aribel. Tell us what is the latest.
Hi, Alma, and yes, Britain's Public Health Service urged Prime Minister Boris Johnson on Wednesday to extend the country's Brexit transition period or risk pushing hospitals already struggling with coronavirus over the edge in the event of a no-deal departure from the EU single market. As Britain struggles to contain a surge in coronavirus cases caused by an apparently more transmissible variant of the virus, NHS or National Health Service leaders said a month's delay would take hospitals away from the immediate danger zone. They warned the Prime Minister that the disrupted changes posed by a no-deal outcome would hit just as the NHS is battling the greatest challenge in its history during what is traditionally its busiest time of year. The NHS might not be perceived to be on the Brexit negotiation table, but the disruption shockwaves from a no-deal outcome could push the NHS ability to function over the edge. The NHS Confederation, one of the health services umbrella organizations, said in a letter, given we are days away from the cliff edge, we urge you to extend the transition period by a month, buying the NHS a precious few extra weeks and enabling the UK to leave the EU after a one-year transition period, it added. As you know, Alma, Britain formally left the EU on January 31, after 5 decades of integration, but a transition period during which it remains bound by a bloc's rules ends on December 31. The spread of the new strain of the coronavirus across southern England, believed to be up by 70% more transmissible, has forced borders closures and threatened supply chains, just as London and Brussels approach the deadline to negotiate their future trade arrangements. NHS leaders cautioned that the current travel chaos could be just a foretaste of the crisis if Britain leaves the EU without any trade deal. Should a deal not be reached, the magnitude and extent of disruption will be a much greater order, they said. The NHS would have to make major adjustments in a short time span as new rules, guidance, and information will be introduced from January 1 in the event of a no-deal departure from the EU. The overhaul would come amid rapidly rising virus cases and a vaccine rollout that has just begun, while NHS workers are tired and depleted, the Confederation said. And also, Alma, you already know that Britain, which has a mass vaccination program this month, has one of the highest death tolls from the virus in Europe, with more than 68,000 deaths. And on Tuesday, it recorded 36,804 new infections, a record since the beginning of the pandemic, bringing the total to more than 2.1 million positive cases. At a press conference on Monday, Johnson refused to consider an extension to the transition period. A government spokesman said Britain was exploring every route to a deal and added NHS will drive the transition period. Back to you, Alma.
Andy. All right, so Aribel, earlier we just reported that France and the United Kingdom has eased the ban on arrivals. Do you have any update on this?
Well, as we know, Europe on Wednesday began lifting travel bans on Britain to put in place a new fast-spreading COVID strain, while the WHO experts were set to meet on a response to it. And to the discovery unleashed panic that led to more than 24 countries suspending UK flights, threatening travel chaos during the holiday seasons. However, the EU instead urged virus tests to be carried out on passengers within 72 hours before travel. In fact, the Netherlands noted that all passengers, included EU citizens, must have a recent negative test to enter. And France was reopening cross-border travel with Britain on Wednesday, but a negative COVID-19 test will be required. Back to you, Alma.
All right, because of these travel restrictions earlier, supermarkets have been warning that the travel ban and delays at ports could see shortages of certain fresh foods. How is your supply there? Aribel, just wondering. How are the supermarkets?
Well,
have you been to one already?
My mom works in one of them, and at the moment, it's not that chaotic. But I think in the long term, it would be very difficult for us to continue the market, and especially without the access on the French border. I think it would be more difficult for the lorries and the deliveries to come through it. But since it is lifting now, I think that it's very helpful, especially in this situation right now.
That's right. All right, thank you very much, Aribel, for your updates there, and we will wait for more updates coming out of the United Kingdom, especially as we follow this developing story. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for having me, Alma. Reporting from the United Kingdom, I'm Aribel Celestino. We live in interesting times.
Antarctica, once the only continent not to be affected by the coronavirus pandemic, has reportedly recorded its first cases. Chile's armed forces said at least 36 people had been infected at its Bernardo O'Higgins base, including 26 Army personnel and 10 civilian contractors conducting maintenance at the base. The 36 individuals who tested positive have since been evacuated to the city of Punta Arenas in Chile, where they are reported to be under isolation and in good condition. Research and military stations in Antarctica, among the most remote in the world, had gone to extraordinary lengths in recent months to keep the virus out, canceling tourism, scaling back activities and staff, and locking down facilities.
U.S. President Donald Trump has urged Congress to amend a $900 billion coronavirus relief bill to more than triple its stimulus payments to Americans. While he didn't explicitly say he would not sign the bill, which passed overwhelmingly Monday in both houses of Congress, the president made it clear he would not accept the legislation. The $900 billion bill includes one-off $600 payments to most Americans, but the president said the figure should be at least $2,000. Let's listen in.
However, the bill they are now planning to send back to my desk is much different than anticipated. It really is a disgrace. For example, among the more than 5,000 pages in this bill, which nobody in Congress has read because of its length and complexity, it's called the COVID Relief Bill, but it has almost nothing to do with COVID. This bill contains $85.5 million for assistance to Cambodia, $134 million to Burma, $1.3 billion for Egypt and the Egyptian military, which will go out and buy almost exclusively Russian military equipment, $25 million for democracy and gender programs in Pakistan, $505 million to Belize, Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, and Panama, $40 million for the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C., which is not even open for business. The $900 billion package provides hardworking taxpayers with only $600 each in relief payments. And not enough money is given to small businesses, and in particular restaurants, whose owners have suffered so grievously. They were only given a deduction for others to use in business their restaurant for 2 years. This 2-year period must be withdrawn, which will allow the owners to obtain financing and get their restaurants back in condition. Congress found plenty of money for foreign countries, lobbyists, and special interests, while sending the bare minimum to the American people who need it. It wasn't their fault. It was China's fault, not their fault. I am asking Congress to amend this bill and increase the ridiculously low $600 to $2,000 or $4,000 for a couple, and to send me a suitable bill, or else the next administration will have to deliver a COVID relief package, and maybe that administration will be me, and we will get it done.
In other news, President-elect Joe Biden says that the massive cyber attack on the U.S. government constitutes a grave risk to the national security and assails President Donald Trump over his response to the threat. Watch this.
And there's still so much we don't know, including the full scope of the breach or the extent of the damage it has caused. But we know this much. This attack constitutes a grave risk to our national security. It was carefully planned and carefully orchestrated. It is a grave risk, and it continues. I see no evidence that it's under control. I've seen none, heard of none. Defense Department won't even brief us on many things. So I know of nothing that suggests it's under control.
Who has otherwise been focused on his unsubstantiated claims of widespread fraud in the November election, tweeted on December 19 that the hack was less significant than reported by the media and said everything is well under control. Trump went on to suggest without evidence that Chinese hackers, not Russia, might have been behind the cyber espionage campaign.
In Rome, the San Raffaele Rehabilitation Hospital has come up with a creative solution to allow friends and families to enjoy personal contact with child patients who are particularly vulnerable to the coronavirus. A hugging curtain. Take a look.
Beh, abbracciare mio figlio dopo 2 mesi che non riuscivo a abbracciarlo penso che sia un'emozione indescrivibile. E poi grazie soprattutto allo staff del San Raffaele che ce l'ha permesso. E non è da poco, sono fantastici, sia gli infermieri, i dottori, tutto l'equipe.
Adesso lui è Thomas,
felice e molto, cioè sono contento che l'ho potuto riabbracciare dopo tanto tempo.
I bambini hanno scritto nelle loro letterine che il loro più grande desiderio era di poter abbracciare o il fratello o la sorella o il papà o comunque o la nonna, perché questa mattina c'è stata anche una nonna, o comunque le persone che non potevano essere ricoverate insieme a loro. Quindi questo è stato, diciamo così, il motivo che mi ha spinto.
No, vi faccio vedere una cosa dell'albero di Natale del reparto fatta adesso. Galleria.
Sydney on Wednesday eased lockdown restrictions for Christmas after Australia's largest city reported a second day of new coronavirus cases in the single digits. Amid a record testing and tracing effort, just 8 new cases were recorded in the past 24 hours, prompting authorities to announce all residents could have at least some visitors over to celebrate the festive period. State Premier Gladys Berejiklian said most Sydney-siders would be allowed to invite 10 adults to their homes, with that number limited to 5 in the neighborhoods at the epicenter of the outbreak. She said the relaxing of rules was possible because of the low number of new cases, 16 in the past 48 hours, and because most have been linked to known infections. The eased restrictions stand in stark contrast to many places in Europe and elsewhere, which have been forced to tighten lockdown and travel rules as the virus spread accelerates.
In other news, 3 police officers were killed and a 4th wounded in central France on Wednesday by a gunman they confronted in response to a domestic violence call. The suspect, a 48-year-old man known to authorities for child custody disputes, was discovered dead several hours after fleeing the home in an isolated hamlet near Saint-Just. He gave no further details on how the man died. The man opened fire at 2 officers who arrived at the house shortly after midnight after being alerted to a reported domestic assault. One was killed immediately and the other shot in the thigh before the man set fire to the house where a woman had climbed onto the roof. 2 further officers responding to the scene were then fired on and killed, according to the prosecutor's office. Police reinforcements and firefighters were rushed to the scene, and all roads leading to the house were blocked off. The woman was safely rescued and was being questioned by police. The Interior Ministry said the victims were aged 21, 37, and 45.
In other news, a Hong Kong pro-democracy media tycoon detained under a new national security law was granted bail on Wednesday under strict conditions, including house arrest and a ban on social media posts. Jimmy Lai, a vocal Beijing critic, is one of the highest profile figures charged under a sweeping security law that China imposed on the financial hub over the summer in a bid to stamp out dissent. He is accused of colluding with foreign countries by calling on overseas governments to sanction Hong Kong and China in response to its ongoing crackdown on pro-democracy activism in the city. Lai, 73, was remanded into custody earlier this month by a dedicated national security judge sitting in a lower court. Judge Alex Lee ordered Lai to pay a 10 million Hong Kong dollar bond and imposed a number of other conditions. He must remain at home, surrender all travel documents, and hold no meetings with foreign officials or foreign institutions deemed to be hostile to China. Lai was also banned from posting on social media, issuing statements, or speaking to the media. Court rules restrict the press from detailing legal arguments made by prosecutors and the defense during a bail hearing. Lai's Apple Daily newspaper has previously reported that the bulk of the prosecution's case against him revolves around tweets and interviews he has given to the media since the national security law was imposed in late June.
In Japan, the highest court has upheld a ruling granting a retrial to a man described as the world's longest-serving death row inmate. A lawyer for the 84-year-old said on Wednesday, Iwao Hakamada has lived under a death sentence for more than half a century. The ex-professional boxer is charged with murdering his boss, his wife, and 2 teenage children. But he and his supporters argued that he confessed to the crime after an allegedly brutal police interrogation that included beatings and that evidence in the case was planted. He tried to retract his confession but was sentenced to death in 1968, with the verdict confirmed by the Supreme Court in 1980. However, in a rare about-face for Japan's rigid justice system, a district court in the central city of Shizuoka in 2014 granted his request for a retrial. The court said investigators could have planted evidence and ordered the former boxer freed, adding it was unbearably unjust to keep him detained pending the new trial. Japan is the only major industrialized democracy other than the U.S. to have capital punishment. And while the practice has its critics, the death penalty is supported by most Japanese.
Meanwhile, an American warship sailed through waters of the contested Spratleys Island in the South China Sea on Thursday in the latest challenge to Beijing's sweeping territorial claims in the region. China claims nearly all of the South China Sea, including the Spratleys Island, though Taiwan, the Philippines, Brunei, Malaysia, and Vietnam all claim parts of it. The region is believed to have valuable oil and gas deposits. Further anchoring those countries and the U.S., Beijing has moved aggressively to build reefs into artificial islands capable of hosting military planes. The move came amid a rise in U.S.-China tensions over the coronavirus epidemic, in which Washington has accused Beijing of hiding and downplaying the initial outbreak detected in the Chinese city of Wuhan late last year. Relations between both countries have been strained on multiple levels since Donald Trump took office in 2017. A trade war launched by Trump has infuriated Beijing, as did his authorization of a $1.3 billion arms sale to Taiwan, which China considers a rebel province.
And the news continues here on Eagle News. We'll be right back.
This portion is brought to you by RJK Services Manpower Agency Corporation.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
Kumanta, sumaya tayong lahat. Saya-saya.
Canada and Britain have signed a temporary agreement to avoid an increase in tariffs between the two countries after the British exit from the European Union in early 2021, according to Ottawa. At the end of November, the two countries announced they had concluded a provisional post-Brexit trade agreement that would reflect, as of January 1, the terms of the deal that Britain benefited from as a member state of the EU. But the agreement could not be ratified before the Canadian Parliament went into its winter recess, which would have resulted in an automatic increase in tariffs between the two countries on January 1st. A foreign ministry statement said the temporary deal allows tariffs between the two countries to remain at current levels until the new trade deal is passed in Parliament.
As the world's economies reels from the coronavirus pandemic, Taiwan is on track to end the year clocking up enviable growth, a testament to the island's success in halting the deadly disease. Throughout much of the year, shoppers have thronged stores, restaurants have stayed busy, tourist attractions have remained open, and factories have kept humming. Watch this.
关键原因都是因为国内的这个消费的市场其实是还是蛮兴盛的，大家把不能出国的这个预算都拿来国内来做消费，所以对整个零售产业来讲，其实算是还没有很大的影响。
The major reason that we have a very good economic growth performance, the major part because of export this year, goes very strong, and mainly because on the electric and electronic parts and ICT parts. This year, we export the growth rate of those parts increasing by 17.5%. So that helps because export totally counts about 65% of total GDP. So when our export grows strong, that helps our GDP totally increasing by 2.45% this year. That probably will be the highest of the world this year.
For the first time since 1991, Taiwan is also set to outgrow its giant neighbor China, where the virus first emerged but has now also been largely vanquished. The International Monetary Fund estimates China will grow 1.9% this year, compared with a global contraction of 4.4%. Taiwan's ability to weather the coronavirus has centered on two crucial elements. When the virus first emerged, authorities made economically painful and unpopular shutdown decisions early on. Borders were shut, strict quarantine measures enforced, and carriers traced. As a result, Taiwan had no local infections for 253 straight days from early April. That clean streak was broken on Tuesday when a man or woman tested positive after coming into contact with a foreign pilot, prompting a scramble to contain the new outbreak.
A U.S.-Israeli delegation signed agreements with Morocco in Rabat Tuesday, cementing a Washington-sponsored normalization of relations between the Jewish state and the North African country. The visiting delegation, led by Jared Kushner, son-in-law and advisor to outgoing U.S. President Donald Trump, and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's security advisor, Meir Ben Shabbat, arrived in Rabat from Tel Aviv on the first direct commercial flight between Israel and Morocco. Less than 2 weeks ago, Morocco became the third Arab state this year after the UAE and Bahrain to normalize ties with Israel under U.S. brokered deals, while Sudan has pledged to follow suit. The U.S. aims to open a consulate in Western Sahara and has pledged investment, which Moroccan media described as colossal. Israel and Morocco are meanwhile due to reopen diplomatic offices. Morocco closed its liaison office in Tel Aviv back in 2000 at the start of the Second Palestinian Intifada or uprising.
In other news, the Washington Post announced plans on Monday to expand its newsroom staff to over 1,000 and add breaking news hubs in Europe and Asia to create a bigger global footprint. The move by the Post, owned by Amazon chief executive and billionaire Jeff Bezos, comes in stark contrast to much of the industry, which has been retrenching amid economic turmoil and a shift away from print. The Post, which said in 2018 it had become profitable, but which does not release financial data, plans to create breaking news hubs in Europe and Asia for more robust 24-hour news coverage. The Daily has been seeking to boost the number of its digital subscribers as it seeks to help or to keep pace with the rival New York Times, with a newsroom staff of at least 1,700 and an increased focus on global readers. The Post will establish new foreign bureaus in Sydney and Bogota, bringing the number of foreign bureaus to 26 after having created a Europe-based operation focusing on covering global conflicts. The hubs in London and Seoul will include a total of 19 reporters and editors, including a visuals editor, an audience editor, and at least one multi-platform editor. In total, the newspaper will be adding 44 journalists to boost the newsroom staff to 1,010, the most ever, including 8 for its personal technology team. Lee Chang-ming just purchased a new smartphone, and while the 70-year-old retiree may still be a bit puzzled by a high-tech device, China's policymakers hope it will help unlock spending by him and millions of other older Chinese citizens. Watch this.
新换了一个手机，华为的 P40， 昨天才开始使用，有些功能我还不太清楚，所以我想再学习一下，再提升一下，让自己的这方面的知识吧，更加充实一下，叫活到老学到老，就是这个。智能手机支付是比较方便的，因为都不接触到现金了，就减少了这个风险，被传染的风险。他体会出啊，他比较会是对的呀。我这样看看。
Meanwhile, virtual idols are taking the real-life stage in China. Although they originated in Japan, virtual idols are gaining popularity in this country, appearing on concerts, TV shows, billboards, and news programs. Take a look.
我什么都应该会，如果我不会的我就去学，如果我不足的我就去弥补，这样才是一个艺人应该有的。
因为虚拟偶像有个最大的特点就是，你其实看不到现实世界中的他们，对吧？对，就可以理论上来说是不灭的嘛，对吧？
怎么个不灭法？
就是只要那个形象还在，对吧？他就可以一直留在心中。
女儿吧，就是我在养成一个养成类的游戏嘛，就是你今天给她收集一些这样的素材，明天给她增加一些那样的色彩，然后就一点一点把她塑造成一个完整完美的人。
博机动队超能力属性的超梦刘歌。
哇！那你可以给我们现场唱2句吗？
可
可以啊，当然可以。Will my reflection shows？ 对，留下歌声，这样。
这3个男孩子会把你往油腻方面带的。
Who I am inside。我什么都应该会，如果我不会的我就去学，如果我不足的我就去弥补。这样才是一个艺人应该有一个这样的团队坚持了5年。做了5年。
We're going to have a lot of new superstars.
Yes.
Iglis International. We'll be right back. Don't go away.
This portion is brought to you by Canreef Corporation, your ventilation and air conditioning specialist. Services offered: supply and installation of elevators, escalators, air conditioners, ventilators, jet towel hand dryers, generators, access control system, factory automation and modernization. For more info, please contact Ami Kanke at 0915-263-7198 or 0998-900-3224.
Mga mahalagang pangyayari na naganap di lamang sa bansa, kundi maging sa iba't ibang panig ng mundo, ating balikan sa Pilipinas 2020. Tinutukan ng Eagle News Team sa iba't ibang sulok ng bansa, pati na sa ibayong dagat. Pilipinas 2020. Hatid sa inyo ng Net25, Radyo Agila, eaglenews.ph at ng Eagle News Live. Pilipinas 2020. Abangan!
Welcome back to the news. Organizers of the coronavirus postponed Tokyo 2020 Olympics said Wednesday they have picked a new creative director to redesign simpler and more restrained opening and closing ceremonies for next year's games. The mammoth task will fall to advertising executive Hiroshi Sasaki, who helped produce the ceremony handing over the games from Rio to Tokyo, famously featuring then Prime Minister Shinzo Abe as a character from the Super Mario video game. Organizers said the decision to replace a previous 7-person creative team would improve efficiency as reshape the traditionally lavish and spectacular ceremonies to be in tune with the situation. Watch this.
日本の伝統やそういうものをしっかりシンプルに受け止めて、その上で、あまり過敏な演出や驚かすというようなそういう形の今までどんどん大きくなってきた式典のイメージをここでガラッと変えるチャンスではないかなというふうにも私も感じまして、その辺はそういうことよりもやっぱり最後に一言このオリンピックを見て皆さんがやってよかったと、やらないよりやってよかったと思っていただく、そこにどうやったらたどり着けるかということをずっと考えたいと思ってます。ですからなんかやはりトンネルの先に希望っていうようなお話が全体にはありますし、その通りだとは思うんですが、なかなかそう簡単に一言では言えないものが僕はあると思っています。お一人お一人、特に医療従事者の方で戦ってらっしゃる方とかからするとですね、やっぱり私が今
並びにコロナを得たイベントの在り方を踏まえた開閉会式を計画していくために、本年7月に大会1年前イベント、1年前プログラムの演出企画を担っていただきました佐々木宏氏を4式典の総合企画エグゼクティブクリエイティブディレクターとしてお迎えいたします。
And LeBron James and Anthony Davis have competition out in the East where a super talented tandem in Brooklyn named Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving can possibly deny the Los Angeles Lakers chances to defend their NBA title. Joining us live from New York, here's Tenny Sumagi. Hello, Tenny.
Hello, Alma. I'm one excited NBA fan.
Indeed.
Brooklyn's hottest, newest tandem, Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, combined for 48 points to rout the Warriors 125-99 to give head coach Steve Nash his first victory as head coach. The team looked extraordinarily dominant as they looked like a high-caliber team that will win this year's NBA title.
I'd be lying to say we're not blessed with a lot of great offensive players and depth, a lot of shooting. Or we should be able to score the ball. That shouldn't be a problem. But we just got to continue to refine and be efficient. As the season goes on, teams are going to get better. It's been a very short training camp. There's been a lot of people coming into camp not in their best condition, and then all the different things that go into this. This season in a pandemic, I think, is going to show teams that are a little bit behind what we normally would be. So as teams get better, ourselves included, and tighten up, we're going to have to be more efficient. And so that's what all I'm saying is that we got a lot of work to do there as well. But we have talent and we can score.
It's been a long time coming, and I'm grateful that we could let our games do the talking. But I'm also grateful that we can have relationships here that matter off the court, that help us on the court. And that was something that I have with KD, but I have with other guys on the team as well. It's just more or less our synergy off the floor. And then now playing on the floor this year has made a difference. We spent a lot of time together. We've just gone through some challenging times, and we're able to put on this uniform as a team together while understanding that the more we stay collective as a group, the better off we'll be in the long run. We don't want to let anything disrupt what we got going on here or what our goals are. It's simple. It's a championship. So we got to enjoy this regular season, like I said. But we're just going to enjoy every step of the journey as well, too.
I just think we came out with a good plan on the defensive side of the ball, which ignited us on the offensive end. And, I know everybody's excited about this new era of the Nets, but as players, we just trying to take it a day at a time and focus on our jobs individually and trying to bring them to the group as best as we can. And I think everybody did a solid job of that tonight.
Brian.
The Nets will face Irving's former team, the Boston Celtics, on Friday. In New York, Tani Sumagi, Eagle News, we live in interesting times.
Thank you, Tenny. We'll see you back soon. I'll see you back.
Little more than 2 months after the Los Angeles Lakers locked up the 2020 crown with a finals win over the Miami Heat, they are back to the grind in a 116-109 loss to the Los Angeles Clippers on the opening night of the 2020-2021 campaign. The night at the Staples Center started with the Lakers receiving their diamond and amethyst championship rings. There were no fans in attendance, but family members. LeBron James describes the day as just weird in all facets. Watch this.
I thought it was great. I thought we got great shots. Time after time, we got the shots we wanted. Again, being aggressive, we put the ball on the ground, we attacked, and we found the open man. He allowed me to play, make mistakes, play, and continue to play. So my job is just to go out there and produce and play my hardest.
It's just weird on all facets, to be honest. Just a weird day. Celebrating a historic moment with our franchise and a historic run what we did last year, and then having to do it without our family and friends and our fans. It's just a weird day. This game one, it's the first test for us. We've literally been together for 9 days as a full group. We got some returning guys, but we got a lot of new pieces that's going to play a big role in our success this year. So we look forward to watching the film tomorrow and get better from tonight.
The Los Angeles Lakers sure did not have long to savor their 17th NBA title. Paul George led the Clippers less than 2 weeks after signing a 4-year contract extension worth a reported $226 million. George scored 26 of his 33 points in the second half as the Clippers kept the Lakers at bay. Kawhi Leonard added 26 points for the Clippers, who are out to expunge the memory of their agonizing Western Conference semifinals loss to the Denver Nuggets, who trailed 3-1 in the series but won in 7 games. LeBron James led the Lakers with 22 points. Anthony Davis added 18, and German point guard Dennis Schroeder, a new addition, scored 14 points with 12 rebounds and 8 assists.
Indeed, it's a weird day. It's a weird day for LeBron, of course.
Well, we will be hearing more from our
Eagle News correspondent Tenny for the NBA games. Yeah.
Well, that's it for tonight's broadcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm CJ Hero. See you again tomorrow.
And as I always say, at the end of the day, there remains so much more to be grateful for. I'm Alma Angeles, and we live in interesting times.